What would you do if you could actually feel the death of your friend happening right in front of you, but you don't know what actually happened? Would you go and investigate it? Would you go and do everything in your power to find out what actually happened to your friend? Well, this is exactly what Duncan MacLeod does in this episode called The Innocent Man.
I'm Duncan MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod, born 400 years ago in the. Well, no, not really. That was a TV show called Highlander. So, just listen to Rockin' at the Movies with me, Adrian Paul, and Shane Comley-White, and you'll learn some interesting facts.
Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Shane Comley-White and you're with me at Rocking at the Movies, and today we're going to be breaking down an episode called The Innocent Man from the Highlander series. This is episode 4 in the first season, and it is one of the most interesting episodes in my view because it actually brings about a completely different vibe when it comes to the Highlander series so far. Now, keeping in mind in the first episode we had the fight with Slan Quince, and that was a direct immortal versus immortal, or actually 3 immortals who are fighting there. In this episode we are now in a different way where Highlander or Duncan actually goes on more of like an investigation, because this is like a detective vibe story where he witnesses by feel and by what's happening around him the death of one of his friends, and that is Lucas Desiree. So Duncan is on his way with Tess to go and visit Lucas because he's residing in the forest in a very nice quiet little town, and he's also trying to stay out of the game, and it's an old friend from Duncan's past. He's always been a very polite kind of person and a very friendly kind of person. Unfortunately, we don't get into what he was or who he was at this particular point in time, but it would be great to know a little bit more of his backstory, and we can maybe even touch on that if you wish. So if you want me to do a little bit of a deep dive into who Lucas was, send me a comment and say deep dive into Lucas, and I'll definitely do so. But going back to the story, basically what happens is there's a couple interesting characters that come into this. We've got Leo, who is a military veteran who is, shame man, he's a little bit mentally challenged due to all the PTSD and the trauma that he has actually faced within the battles that he was fighting in the war. And he's a homeless gent, and he is wandering the streets of this small little town, and he is in such a daze or dwell, and he's delusional with what's going on, and people rip him off and tease him and throw things at him, and it's actually really not nice the way that he is treated, and makes you very sympathetic to people who are brought back from a battle and have to deal with the day-to-day life, even though they've got the PTSD that is haunting them all the time. How do they fit back into the lifestyle of everyone else who hasn't had to deal with this trauma and this intense level of battle and hype and adrenaline rush? So it focuses on him, and he kind of witnesses something. He's pulled into another battle that wasn't even part of his, and he didn't even know it was going on. He just heard lightning and saw crashes and all this. He goes to just see because he's curious, and he stumbles across a murder scene. Didn't see what happened, but he then gets caught red-handed holding the murder weapon. And unfortunately, he's in the wrong place at the exact right time. Unfortunately, when you can say it that way. But there's another sheriff, and this is another character, and his name is called Sheriff Crowley. Sheriff Crowley. Now, Crowley always brings me straight back to Supernatural. I don't know why they always make the bad guys Crowley. Anyway, the Sheriff Crowley is the immortal who, we don't know this at the time, but he stumbles across Leo holding the sword in this cabin in the woods, and he's not interested to find out what's going on, and he kind of pins his murder directly onto Leo straight away. No questions asked. That's that he goes to jail and the investigation starts. So this is where Duncan then decides to investigate himself, because he knows that his friend is gone. He felt it, and he and Tess were on the way to go visit him, and they kind of just stopped in their tracks and said, well, it's no point because now he's dead. So it's quite interesting to see how this actually happens. Now, I've got the question for you with this. Do you feel that Duncan felt it because of his connection with his friend, or was it because of the quickening in the environment, or was it just purely because of the proximity that he was to this actual final battle? But now, the next question I'd like to ask itself with this is, can every immortal feel every other immortal, and how far away do they have to be when they feel the death of one of the immortals. Because we all know that the quickening, or the buzz as they call it, is you can feel an immortal in your area. How far away they are, we never get to that point. We never understand that as well. But it seems like it also happens when someone dies. So it's quite interesting to see. Anyway, going back to what happens is Duncan ropes Richie in. Now, Richie's this kind of guy that he'll just go and do whatever it is. And he loves being in a weird situation and having a little bit of fun. And this is where Duncan kind of uses that to Duncan's gain, if you want to call it that. Because what he does is he actually gets Richie to break into Duncan's car right in front of the police station like a complete idiot. We say it bluntly, or idiot, like they say in Supernatural. So he gets arrested, or he gets detained by the police because he was caught red-handed breaking into this. But this gives an opportunity for Duncan. This gives an opportunity for Duncan to go and speak to Leo, who he knows was arrested falsely for the death of his friend Lucas. So Duncan wants to go find out what happened. How did it all pan out? And then he starts to realize that this guy Leo is not, he's definitely not the guy. He's definitely not the murderer. He's definitely not immortal. And also he's not of sane mind to understand exactly what has happened. But you see, then we get a different two different characters that come into this entire vibe itself. One that Duncan wants to try avoid as much as possible, because so this is a reporter, and her name is Randy McFarland, and she's like a pit bull when it comes to trying to find out what's going on. She wants to get involved in every single story, trying to figure out who did what and how did it all happen, and why would this person kill this person with a sword. She goes all in and becomes a little bit of a thorn in the side for Duncan, because she is always around, and you'll notice this at a later stage when it comes to all the different episodes. But then there's also another investigator who comes to the town, and he tries to help with this investigation, because this is kind of weird. It's something that's not normal in the normal sense, but it also opens a door to another vibe of how things actually work, and it ties into one of the previous episodes, where what happens to all of the headless bodies from each of the immortal kills? Do they just stay there? Who investigates them? How do they actually figure out who the murderer was? So this brings in the whole detective story. And this is where a character named Sergeant Powell comes into play. And he tries to question Leo with what is happening. And there's a whole bunch of flashbacks with some of the military stuff. And he actually empathizes with Leo. So it's also a nice way that we can actually see the good cop and the bad cop, the one that actually has no idea and he doesn't even care about the suspect. But then you get Sergeant Powell, who takes time to try speak to Leo, tries to find out what Leo has been through, what did he see. And there's one line that I'm going back to right to the beginning, where it actually shows what Leo's fate could be, because Crowley, the sheriff, basically says to Leo that he can ride lightning. And in my view, if you don't know, I might be completely wrong, but in my view, this is where that he could actually be facing the electric chair. So an innocent man could be put to death purely because of being in the wrong space and the wrong time. And this is where Sergeant Powell actually comes in to try make sure that he was the person, and to make sure that he is being punished for his crime justly and correctly. But Sergeant Powell realizes that there is something wrong, and it's definitely not as clear-cut as what it is. So the whole idea is they want to take him back to the city and do a proper investigation and see exactly what it is. And obviously Crowley doesn't like this. So he gets his goons in the town that he is the sheriff of, who everyone looks up to, and he kind of uses them to try foil the escape, or the transit of this innocent man who is now the victim, who is now the guy who's actually being possibly going to be put to death, because it's the cover-up story that Crowley's trying to make happen, but it's actually falling apart straight through his fingers. So Duncan gets involved, and Duncan does what he does best, and he tries to save the day. whole range of different characters in this episode. It's actually quite interesting because you got so many different people to connect with. So it's not just one-on-one. It's not just a fight scene. It's more about what kind of hero is Duncan? How does he deal with the fame of it? Does he embrace it? Does he try to avoid it? Like most heroes always want to stay out of the limelight. And I feel that is exactly what Duncan tries to do. He tries to stay away from being noticed because he doesn't want the attention. None of the immortals want the attention because they've got this game and this world that is completely out of the normal world. And if people start investigating and start reporting on what's happening, it can backfire quite badly on their life and their existence. And you'll see how this plays in a much bigger way with the Watchers in a few different seasons down the line. The Watchers play a big role in trying to keep this world very covert and under wraps. Some final thoughts is I feel that this episode gives Duncan a choice. How does he deal with what he has to do? Does he become like a Slan who is out there just for murder because he just loves that aggression and that violence? Or does he become like a Clinch who goes after people and shows his power and his authority and his sense of overinflated power over them? Or is he like Sergeant Crowley, who's quite a devious kind of character, quite nasty, at the same time also racist? And would he use people to benefit him? In my view, no. Duncan is actually more humane. And even though he is a supernatural character or person, he is a very humane individual. And he embraces the humanity of him still. He doesn't feel that his immortality kind of gives him the authority to be better and bigger than everybody else. He's still very humble. He's still very... can I say, he doesn't judge people directly straight away. He'll always try to see both sides of the story before he makes his assessment. And I feel that this is the kind of person that I would like to strive to be. And I actually have strived to be this kind of individual the whole way through. And that is why I do believe that Duncan MacLeod is not a superhero like Superman, wearing a cape, flying through the sky, and lasers out of his eyes, whatever it might be, whatever your superhero might be. I believe that this character is my superhero and my hero. And it was a privilege to be able to speak to Adrian Paul directly about his experience and to see Adrian's side of this character and how Adrian and him seem to be quite similar in my view. So if you have not seen that episode or that interview with Adrian Paul, please just click the video at the end of this video itself and it will take you through to the interview. Now, I also want to mention that I'm going to be uploading a whole range of different interviews with other characters from Highlander because I'm going to be having tons of interviews. I've already got a couple lined up that have been recorded that I've had the privilege of interviewing, but I'll be uploading them closer to those episodes where those characters appear. If you have enjoyed this video, thank you so much for watching right up until now. I'd like to encourage you to like and subscribe, and please don't forget to hit the notification bell because there's a lot of characters or a lot of episodes that are going to be coming up with tons and tons of content that you're going to enjoy. We are going to be delving into Sheriff Crowley a little bit more in the next video that's coming out this week, so you do not want to miss out. We're going to do a deep dive into who he was, how he came about, what kind of mindset he is, and what kind of character he is, as well as a villain. So we're going to be doing that very soon. And don't forget, we've got a lot of interviews coming up. Plus, we're going to be launching something very soon that you're going to be able to be part of. You're going to become a member of our Highlander world, and it's going to be something very unique for members only that you do not want to miss out on. So please keep a lookout for that. Thank you so much. Have a great one. Cheers. Bye.